What does it mean to be a genetic path cutter? I'm going to attempt to explain this in today's video, but first let me introduce myself. My name is Heather Aminette Archer. I am a sound healer and an ascension guide, and I'm here to support the collective at this time with this really nebulous process of DNA activation. So a lot of us have woken up. We understand that there is more than what we can see just within surface life, the whole go to work, pay your bills, pay your taxes, buy a house, have 2.5 kids, and you've made it, right? We're seeing in society currently that dream that has been sold to us is based upon illusion, is false, and is also not guaranteed, right? So a lot of us are in this process of understanding that we're here to generate a new path outside of what we've been taught in school, outside of what we've been taught in work. We're here to actually path cut a new way, not just for our own personal well-being, although that's really important too, but also for the lives of future generations, okay? But here's the thing about being a path cutter. I want you to envision that you're in this really large field of grass, right? The grass is super, super tall, and it is your responsibility to create a sidewalk, right? Through this extremely tall patch of grass, right? This very ever expansive field, and you are responsible for creating a path, right? Because otherwise it would be so difficult to get through, right? It would be near impossible. And even though it's going to be extremely difficult for you to cut this path of grass, once you do this, it's going to make it a lot easier for people after you, right? To be able to enjoy the scenery, to be able to take a new direction, and to also be able to venture off into new possibilities. That is a very fundamental example of what a genetic path cutter is. But if we get more into the nitty gritty, if you are a genetic path cutter, chances are you come from a family that has experienced a high amount of trauma. In the educational realm, they would call this ACEs, also known as adverse childhood experiences. So a long time ago, there was this Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris who did this study upon how trauma impacts a child's health over time. And she created what is now known as this ACEs study. And some of the ACEs would include things like poverty, would include things like abuse, would include things like single parent household, would include things like racism, etc., etc. And in the study, it showed if you got 5 or more ACEs that you were experiencing very high trauma, and not just high trauma, but usually intergenerational trauma. And you'll find, if you even want to research that as a genetic path cutter, a lot of y'all probably already know about what I'm talking about too. But if you want to research that, then that would give you a little bit more insight as to whether or not you come from a family that holds a high amount of trauma, or you might just already know, right? You can see a lot or understand a lot just based upon the conversations that you generally have with your family, the sort of relationships that you generally have with your family, etc. Okay, so that's on a very 3D level. You being a genetic path cutter is finding a way to ensure that the future generations don't have as many ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. That instead of those experiences being adverse or not good or traumatic, that there are more opportunities that you're providing for joy, flexibility, thriving within your family for generations to come. Sounds great, right? Sounds like your family would throw a party for you to be like, wow, thank you so much for helping us with this endeavor of healing from intergenerational trauma and making the path easier for generations to come. You would think that, but actually a lot of times it happens the exact opposite. A lot of times genetic path cutters are ostracized within their family. They are usually the one that's outcasted. They're known for being a little different. They don't quite fit in. And they could even sometimes like get picked on within their family. They're not like fully understood. And so there's this like constant tension that's going on with your family, okay? And a lot of times genetic path cutters are going to come to a point where they got to step out just for like their own mental health and well-being. They got to step out. Like, you may have tried to do the whole like, I'm going to try to have healing centered conversations with my family around healing from trauma and stuff, right? You may have tried that and it may have not worked out very well. And you might even just get to a point like for your own mental well-being that you need to separate yourself from your family to do your own healing. And you might go through some stages of grief as it relates to this. Like, you might first start off really angry, and then you might be like really sad and hurt. And I would say, as a genetic path cutter, if you're at this point where you feel like you need to step away from your family, like, to do it with love, right? To do it with love for yourself, but also to do it with love for your lineage, right? So there gets to a point where you're going to need to step away and work on your own healing journey as a genetic path cutter. You would think that that sounds counterintuitive. If you're here to heal your bloodline, why would you just heal yourself first? And that's because you encompass the all, right? You are not only the microcosm, but you are the macrocosm. When you are able to activate certain DNA within your bloodline and to clear certain generational patterns from your DNA, you immediately just enhance the life chances, not only for the folks in your ancestry that are currently alive, but you also enhance the quality of afterlife for your ancestors. Because even if our family is no longer with us on the spiritual realm or on the physical realm, they are here with us in the spiritual realm, and they're having a spiritual experience. And depending upon how their life turned out in the physical can give you a little bit of a sense of how their afterlife is. This goes against the whole concept that Christianity sold us around us being in this eternal peace in the afterlife. That's not always true, especially if you lived a life full of trauma and full of karmic circumstances and burdens that you weren't able to navigate yourself out of. A lot of times our ancestry is not in peace, okay? And if your ancestry is not in peace, it's much more likely that you are not going to be in peace in the living plane. So there's a symbiotic relationship that we play with our ancestors as well. So the more our ancestors are not at peace, the more we're not at peace. The more we're not at peace, the more our ancestors are not at peace, okay? It's this whole circle of life, all right? It's this whole cycle of life process that's happening. So that means that it starts with you, right? You are the focus and you are the solution, okay? And it's going to be through your transformational journey that other members of your family may or may not say, wow, okay, I see that this person is over here healing, breaking curses. I see that this person is shifting and transforming. That's interesting. I want to learn more. And then they may organically start coming up to you, right? And asking you questions and stuff. And then that's when you know, like, when they are ready, then they'll come to you with their questions, all right? Others are going to want to stay so far away from you. They're not even going to want to be in your presence, because a lot of times they're being ruled by non-physical forces that have been used to oppress your family lineage for generations upon generations, right? And so some family members who come up in really traumatic circumstances do not have agency over their bodies, do not have agency over their minds or their spirits. And so when they see somebody trying to heal, they want to go in the other direction, or they want to ostracize that person, right? Because if they give that person too much space who's trying to do the healing work and they're not prepared, that person's not prepared to do it, what's going to happen is that it's just going to start making them feel bad, right? Because they're going to know, like, okay, this person's healing. I don't have the desire or the capacity at this moment right now to heal. So does that mean something's wrong with me? So a form of cognitive dissonance that a lot of your family members that you may be having tension with right now, a lot of things that they're doing for their own personal self-preservation and protection is they want to make you seem like the wrong person. They want to make you seem like the person who is crazy, the person who is off, the person who doesn't have their life together, etc., because you're not doing the standard linear life track. And that's the other thing. Being a genetic path cutter, you're not here to take the road that everybody else is on. You're not even here to take the road less traveled, okay? You are here to create the road. You're here to create an alternative pathway, all right? So just think about that thankless hard labor of having to cut that long grass, right? Cut that long grass to just kind of make your own road, and it's gonna be hard, long, hard hours sometimes. You're gonna maybe be alone. Not a lot of people are gonna wanna join you in that. You're not necessarily getting paid for it, right? It's not like you responded to a job opportunity that said, cut this road and pave the way and you get paid X amount of dollars with health insurance. No, that's not a part of being a genetic path cutter. So it can be a heavy load. And that being said, like, what's rewarding about it? What's rewarding is the DNA activation, because truth of the matter is, until you heal the intergenerational karma within your bloodline, then you are not able to ascend and evolve. Other people are going to tell you different. Other people are going to say, oh, you can just completely cut yourself off from your ancestry and you can just completely, heal and ascend on your own. And that's fine, right? You're going to hear a lot of that in the ascension community. But I'm actually here to say that it doesn't necessarily work like that. We do heal in a collective, even if we have to cut ourselves off from the collective for a certain amount of time. You definitely need to contend with the ancestral trauma and the stuff that your ancestry did that wasn't really so cool. That wasn't really so great. You got to kind of reconcile with that and go through a deep process of forgiveness and non-conditional love as it relates to that, okay? And here's the kicker though. There's a reason why genetic path cutting is so difficult. It's because it is a way towards consciousness evolution for the planet. So why would we make it so easy to do that, right? If there are non-physical forces residing on this planet at this time that may feel invested in humanity not evolving because they have created a vampiric system of energy harvesting, right? Energy harvesting off of the trauma, the fear, the pain, and the turmoil of others in order to sustain a really sad sort of existence in the non-physical realm, okay? And, a lot of these non-physical beings, they're masquerading as gods and saints and all that kind, and ascended masters and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times they do not hold the keys to your ascension, okay? They weren't even able to ascend. Even some of the ones that you thought were able to ascend, in all reality, they were not, okay? So a lot of these beings and these saints and ascended masters, a lot of times they're going to lead you astray, and they're going to do it acting as if they're acting in your best interest, but in all actuality, they're kind of here to keep you stagnant and to keep you at war with people within your family, people within your bloodline, people in society, etc. All right, because they kind of thrive off of this whole polarity consciousness, right? Good versus evil, black versus white, that sort of thing. That's why duality, we see a duality being at the root of a lot of the isms in society, things that are, or the phobias within our society. So you got your racism, you got your capitalism, etc., etc. It's all kind of based on this polarity sort of thing, okay? And so a lot of times, the beings that we were taught to worship or taught to revere or give energy to, a lot of times they also thrive off of this polarity consciousness. But what we're moving into as we genetic path cut is we're moving into this nebulous space of non-duality and polarity integration. Okay, a lot of times if you are a genetic path cutter and you have a lot of trauma within your DNA, it is because you have ancestry that has been at war with each other. Okay, so you might be a product of, like, your lineage might be a product of rape, for example. Okay, so there's been a lot of war, there's been a lot of conquering on this planet, and as we know, a lot of times when war and conquering happens, what also happens, usually there's a conquering over, like, sexuality as well. So a lot of times, you know, especially if you have slavery within your DNA, and most of us do, regardless of whatever color you are, you usually do have some slavery to contend with in your DNA, because slavery has been an ongoing phenomenon for eons. Okay, civilization after civilization has gone through a really vicious cycle of slavery. Okay, and there's a very distinct reason for that. And you can also check out some of the content on the Patreon. I go into a lot more in-depth stuff related to genetic path cutting and intergenerational healing intergenerational trauma. There's actually a meditation on there for healing ancestral trauma and karma. So that might be something to check out. There's also meditations on healing the inner child, healing the inner family, lots of affirmations, lots of talks, just journal articles, whole bunch of stuff to support you with your journey on ascending and genetic path cutting. Okay, so you might have ancestry that is at war with each other, living within your cells. Okay, so as somebody who's a genetic path cutter, as somebody who is here to activate their DNA, you are here to embody cellular unity. Okay, so you're here to get at the root cause of the trauma in your DNA, heal that trauma from the root, from its inception, and embody cellular unity through radical forgiveness and non-conditional love. Easy enough, right? Simple enough, right? So that in itself is a process, but there's another tedious process of actually finding the records related to the trauma. We've been taught in our society that all that exists are what our five senses are able to gather, right? What we can see, what can we taste, what can we touch, what can we feel, what can we smell? That's it. All right. Anything else related to intuition has usually, if you can't see it, if your five senses can't make sense out of it, then anybody who's intuiting any other things is either seen as being a little cuckoo or nuts a lot of times. Okay, so it's unfortunate, but in the third dimensional plane, a lot of folks who really did have access to intuitive capabilities but weren't able to discern them enough, weren't able to gain mastery over them enough because it wasn't cultivated within their families. A lot of times they have been considered crazy, okay, and not to be listened to and not to be entertained and to be felt sorry for. But a lot of times those were the folks who were supposed to do some genetic path cutting, and a lot of times they were pushed to the side, they were ostracized, and they were ostracized by their families and by society and kind of kept in a corner, and basically had their self-esteem shredded. Okay, and that's the old way, but we're stepping into a new world, and it's becoming more and more difficult to ignore the unseen realms. All right, and we're going to see this dynamic continue to increase. So this is the time for the outcast. This is the time for the black sheep. Okay, this is your time. This is the time of the genetic path cutter. You have to think about all the things in society that used to be considered not cool until one day they became cool. Give you an example. Introvert. Being an introvert, it's almost considered to be cool now to be an introvert. It was not cool always to be an introvert, right? You were considered a little weird to be a little too introverted and not extroverted enough. And now it's kind of like you see like a lot of cool people are introverts, you know? I'm team introvert personally. Yeah, so you just have to think about it. Like in this time, you might not be considered cool yet, but this is your time. And of course, being a generational path cutter is not about being cool. You do have to be able to bravely step out on your own and be really unapologetic about your place in the world. And you're not going to necessarily get the claps. You're not going to get the standing ovation. You're maybe not even going to get the likes, shares, and subscribes a lot of times, okay? And that's all right. That's all right. It's really not about that. And it's about paving the way. You got to think about a lot of the folks who believed in themselves enough, believed in their mission enough before anyone else believed in them. And sometimes what ends up happening, which is kind of cool, is that other people will jump the bandwagon soon enough. But you don't wait to get consent from other people to do this work. You need to decide that this is important enough for you, first and foremost, and for your legacy, that you want this enough, that you are interested in transcending trauma from a DNA cellular level. That is what being a genetic path cutter is all about. And this requires you healing on the physical plane. This requires you healing on the energetic plane. This requires you healing on the spiritual plane, okay? This requires looking at yourself as a multidimensional being. Even right now, as I'm speaking to you, I have a physical body, but I also have an etheric body, I have a mental body, an emotional body, a dreamtime body. And essentially all of these bodies need to be in alignment. They need to be cleared. My chakras, which you're not necessarily able to see as I record this, my chakras need to be in alignment. They need to be in a state of wholeness, in a state of unity. These sorts of things need to be in alignment in order for me to show up as my best self and for me to embody a phase of DNA activation. All right. And so that means not just healing in this present moment, not just healing my body, but it also means healing my past. It means healing my ancestry. It means healing myself in the parallel. It means healing my inner child. Sounds kind of exhausting, right? But this is the work of a genetic path cutter. You don't do this work for, your work might not necessarily pay off in the now. It will, but you might not see the fruits of your labor paying off in this moment. But you heal multidimensionally. So the work that you put in now to your genetic path cutting makes the path easier for folks and yourself in the future, makes the path easier for your ancestors as well, okay? And so if you are interested in diving more into genetic path cutting, I encourage you to join the Patreon, specifically as it relates to the Galactic Black Rose tier on Patreon. There are some really intensive shadow work meditations to support you with healing yourself from a multi-dimensional lens so that you are able to pave the way for future generations, right? And, this stuff is going to become more and more commonplace to heal your past lives, to heal yourself in the parallel realms as well. There's a lot that's been hidden from us. There's a lot of stuff that impacts what's happening right now that we have not been able to access because it was considered too crazy or too weird. But the veil is getting thinner and thinner by the day. And you do yourself a really huge service and you embody your power, your goddesshood, your goddesshood on so many levels when you intend to break these generational cycles, okay? So you as a genetic path cutter might not be talking to your family. You might be taking a break from your family. You might be really diving into this healing journey and it can feel really lonely, but know that even though your healing sometimes can feel like you're alone, you're doing it for the collective, okay? You're doing it to enhance collective consciousness and you're doing it to increase opportunities to move around and grow and thrive for other generations. You are cutting that really large different path in that huge field of grass, okay? And but you know, when that path is finally complete, and also, you know, you might start getting help along the way, but somebody has to start the process, okay? Otherwise the path won't get built, and that's where you come in. That is why you're here. And I'll be doing more content around, specifically as it relates to DNA activation and how to get started on this process. I'm so sorry. No, you cannot just get a meditation, like purchase a meditation and get your DNA activated like that. Sorry if anyone's telling you that. They're really leading you astray. I'm so sorry. You cannot just purchase a DNA activation online and have somebody else activate your DNA for you. That's not the way how this works. Okay, it's all you. It's you. Okay, you have to set your intention. You need to activate your goddesshood to make this happen. And it's not just a one and done kind of thing. It is a committed lifestyle. Okay, and so if you're interested in learning more, check out the links below. Sending you so much love, joy, peace, thriving, prosperity, and abundance.